Brad Pitt, one of Hollywood's most celebrated figures, a man who has captivated millions worldwide with his nuanced performances and refined presence, now faces a loss that no cinematic spotlight could ever obscure. His mother, Jane Pitt, has passed away, closing the chapter on nearly a decade of heartbreak in which she was unable to see her 6 grandchildren, once the pride and joy of the entire family. The most devastating detail is that, for the final 9 years of her life, Jane was completely cut off from her grandchildren, not because of distance, but because of deep fractures born from Brad Pitt's highly publicized divorce from Angelina Jolie. Those close to the situation say the estrangement stemmed from post-divorce tensions, with many pointing blame toward Angelina. Only now, with the release of previously unseen photos and emotions, has the public been given a glimpse into a painful reality. A family once seen as a Hollywood ideal, now divided to the point where blood ties have all but severed. This is no longer just the story of a celebrity. It reflects the quiet, lingering wounds found in countless families worldwide, where bitter separations turn love into a barrier and warm memories into endless empty spaces. Most striking is the isolation Jane Pitt endured in her final years. As a mother and grandmother who adored her family, she not only lost the chance to watch her grandchildren grow, but was also denied the seemingly ordinary moments any family should take for granted: shared meals, an embrace after time apart, or those small, intimate conversations only grandparents and grandchildren truly share. Apart from twins Knox and Vivienne, too young at the time to make their own decisions, all of Brad's children distanced themselves from the Pitt family. Among them were also expressions of public anger, as in the case of Pax, who openly voiced discontent toward his father. This shows that Brad and Angelina's divorce was never just the dissolution of a marriage. It created a generational fracture, with repercussions extending far beyond the two of them. For Knox and Vivienne, the story takes on a different shade. At the time the family broke apart, they were far too young to fully comprehend the events unfolding around them. They could not choose whether or not to see their grandparents. That choice rested with their parents, two people locked in a bitter, entrenched conflict. And when that decision is dictated by adult disputes, children often become these silent victims of a battle they never chose to fight. Family psychologists have long warned that in contentious divorces, limiting children's contact with their grandparents does more than weaken family bonds. It can have lasting emotional and developmental consequences. In public appearances, Brad Pitt has consistently remained silent about the relationship between his mother and his children, but those who know him understand this is a wound that may never fully heal. For a man raised in a disciplined yet warm household, watching his mother pass away without seeing her grandchildren was a double blow, a personal loss compounded by the helplessness of witnessing family ties being torn apart. People close to Brad say that, despite his efforts to focus on work and maintain a composed image, he carries a deep regret for not being able to repair the connection between his mother and his children before it was too late. The twins, Knox and Vivienne, because they were too young to decide for themselves, have had to live in a reality shaped entirely by adults. They grew up between two worlds, one with their mother, one with their father, each with its own stories and perspectives, which may be vastly different. In such situations, psychologists often warn of memory distortion, where children, having contact with only one side of the family, develop a skewed perception of the other. When this distortion persists over time, reconciliation becomes exceedingly difficult, sometimes impossible. Now that everything has passed into the realm of memory, all that remains are the what-ifs. What if Brad and Angelina had found even a minimal common ground, allowing his mother to see her grandchildren? What if the children had been able to spend time with both sides of the family? What if angry words had been replaced by dialogue? But time does not turn back, and for Brad Pitt, this loss will forever be a part of his life's unerasable memory. What makes this story all the more heartbreaking is that it might have been prevented, had there been even the slightest willingness to compromise. In many cultures, the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren is regarded as a uniquely important bond, one that not only adds to the love children receive from their parents, but also serves as a vital source of emotional support. When that bond is severed, both the elderly and the young lose something irreplaceable. Actor Brad Pitt has often shared that the person who had the deepest influence on him was his mother, Jane Pitt, a devoted educator from Springfield, Missouri. If you only saw Brad Pitt on the red carpet, you might think his life was inseparable from Hollywood's glamour, tailored suits, perfect smiles for the cameras. But behind that dazzling light was a simple, private woman who never sought attention. the one Brad Pitt once described as the moral compass of his life. Jane Pitt, his mother and the grandmother of Knox Pitt, has passed away at the age of 84, leaving an irreplaceable void in the family. News of her death drew public attention not only because of her blood ties to one of the most famous actors in the world, but also because of the way she lived, quietly, principled and steadfast, even while her son was at the center of global media scrutiny. She is survived by her husband, William Alvin Pitt, their 3 children, Brad, Doug, and Julie Neal, and 14 grandchildren, including 6 from Brad Pitt's tumultuous marriage to Angelina Jolie, Maddox, Paxton, Zahara, Shiloh, Knox, and Vivienne. To understand why Brad Pitt has always held deep, unwavering respect for his mother, one must look at her beginnings. A teacher, school counselor, and philanthropist. Not a star, not a celebrity, yet she built a rock-solid moral foundation for her children. Together with her husband, the owner of a trucking company, she raised their 3 children in Springfield, Missouri, in an environment far removed from glamour. Their life was so modest that, had it not been for their eldest son becoming a global movie star, the name Jane Pitt might never have appeared in the press. Even when Brad reached the height of his career, she and her husband chose to remain outside the whirlwind of media attention, appearing only occasionally at major events with their son and grandchildren, such as the 2012 Academy Awards or the 2014 premiere of Angelina Jolie's Unbroken. Jane Pitt stands as a living example of an intriguing paradox. While Hollywood thrives on dramatic tales of fame, power, and scandal, she wielded her influence through quiet presence. That quietness, to the unobservant, might seem ordinary, but for a family surrounded by camera lenses for over 3 decades, it was a deliberate choice, perhaps even a strategic act of protection. This is why her story is more than just a family's loss. It is also a lesson in understanding how Brad Pitt, despite enduring a painful divorce, bitter custody battles, and relentless tabloid rumors, has managed to retain a measure of inner balance. Because his mother did more than raise him, she safeguarded those values to her very last day. Actor Brad Pitt has often shared that the person who had the deepest influence on him. Brad enjoyed a peaceful childhood with his parents, younger brother, and sister in Springfield. He later attended the University of Missouri, majoring in journalism with a focus on advertising. However, just 2 weeks before graduation, he dropped out and moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of becoming an actor. Initially surprised by his decision, Jane Pitt quietly supported her son, as long as he was serious about his choice. In an early career interview, when asked if his parents were happy to see him become an actor, the Legends of the Fall star smiled and replied, "They're happy I have a job. In fact, they didn't even know about it until I got one." Jane and her husband occasionally appeared with Brad Pitt on the red carpet, including at the premiere of The Devil's Own, 1997, the 2012 Academy Awards where Brad was nominated, and the 2014 premiere of Unbroken, directed by his then-wife Angelina Jolie. In 2002, she joined The Late Show with David Letterman along with several other celebrity mothers for a Mother's Day special. There, she humorously offered her son a piece of advice. "Don't believe all the hype about yourself. You're actually not that tall, a bit chubby, and going bald." When Brad's children were young, Jane often visited them. She was sometimes photographed alongside Angelina Jolie and their 6 young children. In recent years, after Brad and Angelina's divorce and as the children grew older, Jane appeared less frequently in public. In 2009, Brad and his siblings donated $1 million to establish the Jane Pitt Pediatric Cancer Center in Missouri, named in her honor. It was the first facility in the region to have a doctor specializing in pediatric oncology and hematology. Jane was deeply pleased that her children were giving back to the community. In 2020, Brad hosted her 80th birthday celebration at his beachfront estate in Santa Barbara, even chartering a private plane to bring his parents and the extended family. Brad's niece, Sydney Pitt, shared photos from the celebration on Instagram. At the premiere of F1 in June, while being interviewed by NBC's Today Show, Brad took the opportunity to greet his mother. "I've got to say hi to my mom because she watches this show every morning," he said, blowing a kiss toward the camera. "To my mom, Jane Pitt, I love you." On August 6th, Sydney Pitt announced on Instagram that Jane Pitt had passed away at the age of 84, leaving behind an irreplaceable loss for the family. She wrote, "If you ever met her, you'd know she had the biggest heart. She cared deeply about everyone and everything for no reason, without questions. She taught me how to paint, how to be strong, how to live with kindness, how to love Jesus in all circumstances, and how to find joy in the smallest things. She came up with the silliest games just to make us laugh. She believed in fairness, in selflessness, and in doing good simply because it was the right thing to do. She could keep up with all 14 grandchildren without tiring. We were so lucky to grow up in her embrace, and I know she lives on in each of our hearts.